We start with All Elite Wrestling. AEW is on a roll after selling out their first TNT taping in Washington, D.C. to the tune of over 10,000 seats. They had back-to-back sellouts of their next two sets of TVs, the October 9th show in Boston and the October 16th show in Philadelphia. It only took them about an hour to do so. The Boston show set up for about 4,500 people. The Philly show configured for about 7,700. And already announced for week 2 is Jon Moxley against Shawn Spears. And as previously mentioned, the Young Bucks in a rematch from last week's House of Glory show against Private Party, which I believe is part of the AEW Tag Team title tournament. And week 3 in Philly, we'll see the first defenses of the AEW World Championship and the Women's Championship as well. And I would say this, because again, every time there's a big AEW story or they sell out or nearly sell out, you get a lot of people who are very excited and very happy for them. And then you have the brigade that just does not like AEW, or they think it's so overhyped they can't get behind it, and they find any way to knock it down. Let's just appreciate how impressive this truly is here just for a second. You can appreciate how impressive it is for them to sell the number of tickets that they sold in 1 hour the other day, even with whatever scalpers may have picked up tickets. I mean, look, if they have a building that's configured for 7,700 people, you didn't have 7,700 scalpers buying tickets. Whatever that number is, it's still impressive. And you can recognize that while also recognizing that AEW is still in the honeymoon phase with fans. And people have to admit that as well. We also have yet to see how tickets are going to sell on the West Coast. These are all East Coast shows. DC, Boston, Philly. This is all East Coast. And I would say East Coast is probably the strongest area for wrestling in this country. I mean, you've got wrestling all over the place. But I would say the East Coast is probably the safest and maybe easy. I don't want to say easy, but I'm sure there's some independent promoters listening to this going, easy? Easy? I wouldn't say it's easy to sell tickets, but that is just a wrestling hotbed. But selling out their first 3 TVs, including 2 of them within 1 hour, that's something that you can't put down. You cannot diminish that. You know how many promotions have sprouted and started up? And now, granted, they didn't have the kind of money in the television that AEW has, but so many promotions have come and gone. They've opened, they've folded. This is something that we haven't seen in a very long time. And in time, we'll see if they can do the same when they run bigger buildings, because these are not the biggest buildings that they're running. So that's another element to this as well. It's nice that they can pack in, a building that, once the stage and everything is set up, can fit 6,000 or 7,000. But what about a building that can accommodate 16 or 17,000? We haven't seen that yet either. But I say this, you got to crawl before you can walk. You have to walk before you can run. But so far, so good. And speaking of Jon Moxley, according to Sports Illustrated, Moxley's deal with New Japan Pro Wrestling, this is a question that I had, watching him progress in the G1, and of course he has the United States Championship, and I figure, well, he may have to drop that before they go to TNT, and maybe that'll be the end of his run in New Japan. It would be a shame, because he seems to be having fun, and I've enjoyed, watching the majority of his matches so far, and the way he's matched up with some of these guys in New Japan. So we come to find out, according to Sports Illustrated, that his deal with New Japan is said to run all the way through the Tokyo Dome at the beginning of January. At least that first... Remember, they're doing back-to-back nights in the Dome, January 4th and 5th. And according to this report, his deal extends through the January 4th Dome show, part 1, I guess you would say, of Wrestle Kingdom, which means he should end up being in a match at Wrestle Kingdom. They speculated that maybe he'll have a third match with Juice Robinson after, he won the U.S. title from Juice in June. Then they had Juice beat Moxley in the G1, so they're all knotted up now. And, they had a couple of good matches together. And actually, the first match was very good, and I guess that could work. And Juice is somebody who, is on the ascent in New Japan, so why not have Moxley put him over on the way out? I guess that could work, but I'm still waiting on that Moxley-Suzuki match. Personally, I wouldn't mind seeing that. And finally, there was yet another AEW signing this week. Orange Cassidy, freshly squeezed, is now a part of the All Elite Wrestling roster. Some people seem to think that I am Orange Cassidy, but they have no proof of this. So I shall speak about him in the third person here. Orange Cassidy has signed a deal with AEW, and this has led to a lot of divided opinion. I'm sure Jim Cornette's having an aneurysm somewhere. When is he not having an aneurysm? So on one side, you have people who think that he's entertaining. On the other side, you have people who think that he is the complete opposite of what AEW ought to be, and that the company may be relying too much on comedy characters. You know, for a company that wants to be more sports-oriented and have, you know, wins and losses mean things and just take a different approach than maybe something you would see in WWE, you know, is signing somebody like Orange Cassidy the way for this company to go? You have him and the Librarian and a bunch of characters that people really just don't seem to like. And I'm not the biggest fan of the Librarian stuff anyway. That's just a matter of personal taste. But you get a lot of divided opinion on this. And the thing, you know, if you're not familiar with Orange Cassidy, I'm sure most of you are by now, but if you're not, he's a guy who wrestles with sunglasses on. He got his hands are in his pockets almost at all times. He delivers these little micro kicks that make wrestling, you know, look like a sideshow to a lot of people. They don't like it. It's comedy wrestling to them. He is dubbed the laziest man in professional wrestling. That is his gimmick. And my attitude is, this company has signed a lot of very talented wrestlers so far. They've put together an impressive roster up to this point of talent, all of whom bring something different to the table. Some of them are more technical. Some of them are more high spot oriented. Some of them are more comedy. Some come from a lucha background. Some come from a Japanese background. Some were big stars somewhere else. Other names you've probably never heard of before in your entire life. What is so bad about them signing Orange Cassidy? We've seen him once in this company, in the Battle Royal at Double or Nothing. The man can wrestle. He's wrestled for over 15 years. He's been doing the Orange Cassidy stuff for about half that time. He wanted to stand out. He wanted to be different. There actually is this great little kind of mini documentary that was filmed a couple of years ago that followed him around on the independents and interviewed him, and he kind of explained this. It's up on YouTube. He wanted to stand out and be different. You know, he could do a moonsault off the top, but guess what? So can everybody else, and they can do it better than he can. So, all right, well, I guess that won't be my thing. What can I do? What can I do to have fun? What can I do to stand out from the pack and be different than what everybody else is doing? And it's worked for him. It earned him a contract. 6 months ago, I bet you didn't even know what an Orange Cassidy was. Now he's got people talking about him. They either love the guy or they hate the guy. That sounds like somebody that I would probably want to have on my roster as a utility player. And again, the man can wrestle. I watched that Beyond Wrestling match online, the one that he had with David Starr at the end of last year. It's a very good match. So he can wrestle. I suspect that we'll get a lot of the same comedy at first, but in time, after a few months maybe, he'll start to show more and more of what he can do. Because he can't just do, you know, the hands in the pockets thing and the little mini kicks all the time. But you give the character a chance to evolve and, again, show people over time what he's capable of. Yeah, and there is something to be said, I think, for him going out there and doing all that stuff and doing that shtick. And maybe people who have never seen him before look at him and think the same thing that a lot of you are thinking. Like, all right, I don't see it. I don't get it. Why is this guy on TNT? Why is this guy all elite? I don't understand it. But then he busts out a big move here, busts out a big move there, and it's like, wow, I didn't know he could do that. Maybe that's the idea. I can almost think like a Nick Dinsmore when they brought him in as Eugene. Yeah, Nick Dinsmore was said to have been a really good wrestler, and I didn't get to see a lot of it because I didn't see his work in OVW and pre-WWE, but I heard about what a great wrestler he is, and what a great trainer he'll make one day. And then he comes in with the Eugene gimmick, and it's the polar opposite of what you would expect from somebody who is dubbed a great wrestler. But that was the character that he was given. He made the most of it. Now, if Eugene one day got bopped on the head by a frying pan, and all of a sudden he came out as the modern incarnation of Bret Hart, and started doing all these moves that you never saw him do before, that would have been pretty impressive. It would have been a different side of him that people had never seen before. Now, they never went in that direction, but there is something to be said for a character that is given the chance to evolve over time. I'm just saying I think people are getting way ahead of themselves here and are just getting way too upset about something that's not worth getting upset over. You know, as long as they don't go too overboard on the comedy, I don't see any problems having somebody like him on their roster. He got over great with their audience. That's an audience of diehards. And yes, they should find a way to appeal to more than just the diehards, but you got to keep a little something for the fans that brung you to the dance. For the ones who bought up all these tickets for Vegas, and for DC, and for Boston, and for Philly. Orange Cassidy is one of those things. You don't take all of that away. You don't go to TNT and completely strip away everything that kind of brought you to this point. And he's a small part of it, and he's only been on one show so far, but he's a part of that. I think that's a small price to pay in order to keep that part of your audience happy.